What's going on, everybody? It's Jonathan here with Office Skills. Today we're going to be looking at 9 tricks that you can use to look like an absolute pro in Excel, even if you're just a beginner. All right, let's go ahead and dive into that list.
The first tool that we're going to take a look at is Analyze Data, and all that we need to use this tool is a data set that has column headers. So Jonathan's Cars That Drive You Wild has been very profitable, but I think if we get some insights from this data, we can become more profitable. Let's go ahead and click Analyze Data up here in the Home tab, and Excel is analyzing that data for us. It gives us a pivot table showing us the sales and profit by maker. Wow, Toyota is very profitable. Maybe we should carry more Toyotas. And as we can see, Maker Toyota has noticeably higher sales. Okay, I'm really liking Toyotas here. Maybe we should get rid of something like Volkswagen to clear more room for Toyotas on our lot. And as we scroll down, Excel is providing even more insights in the form of pivot charts and pivot tables. We can see that from Nissan, the Altima is the most profitable, accounting for the majority of quantity sold. And if we want to find custom insights here, we can go ahead and type in insights by column headers. So we can look for profit by maker, hit enter, and Excel is going to pull up a pivot chart for us here. Wow, that is super useful. The second tool that's going to give us incredibly powerful insights is quick analysis. And all that we need for that is just a column of data. So we have here a range. Let's go ahead and select it. And then that quick analysis icon pops up. Let's go ahead and click on it. We can get formatting, charts, totals, tables, and spark lines easily at our fingertips. I love using data bars because it shows us a bar chart within each cell in that column. Let's say we don't want that. We can hit Control Z to go ahead and remove those data bars and then come back to the quick analysis icon, click it again, and let's use color scale. This is a type of conditional formatting that takes the top third of data, highlights it in green, the middle third highlights it in gray, and the lowest third of data is in red. This is super useful when we're looking at our most profitable car models and our least profitable car models. A pivot table is one of the most powerful tools that Excel has to offer, but if you're not a pivot table pro, then building one of these out from scratch can seem kind of intimidating. So let's have Excel do that for us. Let's come up to the top ribbon in the Insert tab, and before we click on recommended pivot tables, let's first click in anywhere into this data set. Okay, now let's go ahead and click recommended pivot tables. Excel has found that entire range for the data set, and it's recommended us a ton of very useful pivot tables based upon that. We have sum of profit by maker, sum of sales by maker, sum of quantity sold by maker, average profit by maker, sum of profit by car model. Let's go ahead and click on this one and then click OK to insert it. It's going to appear in a new sheet. Now, normally in Excel, when we're building out a pivot table, we build that from scratch. And all of these areas down here are going to be empty. But because Excel recommended this pivot table, it's already pre-populated the rows and the values. Now, if we want to, we can continue to build off of this example by dragging more fields here into these areas. So we could add quantity sold to the values on top of the profit. And now we have another column here in our pivot table for the sum of the quantity sold. So even if we don't know how to build out a pivot table on our own, we can have Excel build one for us and then alter that pivot table to fit our needs by changing the rows, the columns, or the values here that are going to populate our pivot table. We can also mess with the filters a little bit, but for the sake of this demonstration, we're not actually going to use filters because coming up next, I'm going to show you how to use slicers instead. So every time we take a data set in Excel and we turn it into either an Excel table or an Excel pivot table, we're going to get these filters on our columns, and we can change how we sort that data. We can also change what data is displayed within that column right here, which is going to be useful if we want to look at only certain portions of our data or illustrate that data from a different perspective. But instead of changing those filters in here, we can also come up to Insert Slicers within Pivot Table Analyze. And Insert Slicers can also be found in the Insert tab. If we come over to Slicer over here, we can use this anytime we have an Excel table or a pivot table. So let's go ahead and click on it. and we can decide how we want to slice this data. So let's say, for example, that we want to slice this data by maker, so we can only display certain makers. Now we have a slicer here that is currently displaying all 3 makers, but let's say we only want to look at Toyotas right now because we just found that those were our most profitable cars, and we want to find out which models are doing the best. So now when we just select Toyota from this slicer, we can see here that under sum of profit, the 4Runner and the Camry are both driving a ton of profit for us. Let's say we want to clear those filters, we can hit the X button and that brings us back to all of our data, or we can select multiple by clicking on the select multiple button here, and now we can display Toyota and Nissan to analyze both of these car makers at the same time. And this is probably the most user-friendly way to filter data. Instead of going into this filter, clicking in and out of it, we can easily just manipulate that data from the slicer right here. What if we only have a hard copy of our data and we'd like to get it into a spreadsheet? Well, Excel has an answer for that in their mobile app. First, let's click on the 3 dots in the bottom right-hand corner of our screen. Then from the Insert tab, we'll click Data from Picture. We can then use the camera on our mobile phone to take a photo of our data, and then Excel is going to extract the data from our photo. We then have a chance to fix any errors in our data, which are going to be highlighted in red by Excel. For example, we have coverage options instead of coverage options. Let's go ahead and fix that. And once we've updated that, we can hit Done, and then we can go ahead and insert this data. There's still 7 errors in the data, but let's insert it anyways. And this is looking really good. Let's auto adjust the width of these columns so that we can see all of the data. And wow, that just saved us a ton of time that it would have taken to enter that data manually. Sometimes the data that we have in Excel is not going to be very pretty. So we have in front of us the same data set for Jonathan's Cars That Drive You Wild, but now the width and the height of the columns and rows is all messed up. So let's use a quick shortcut to go ahead and reformat this and auto-fit those rows and columns. Let's hit Control A to select all, and then we're going to hold down Alt HOI at the same time, and that just auto-adjusted the width of our columns. Now we can do Alt HOA for the rows, or we can come in here to our row title. We can find the edge of it when the cursor changes like this, and we can just double click. And that just changed the row height to auto-fit all of them, and now we can see all of that data very clearly. Sometimes when we're entering data in Excel, we can let Excel do that work for us. So let's say in column F, we're combining column A and B. We want both the maker and the car model in the same column. So let's go ahead and type in Toyota Prius. And then instead of just doing this manually in every single row, let's hit Control E for Flash Fill. And Excel has gone ahead and filled in all of the rows below as well as the row above us. Pretty useful. Anytime there's a pattern in the data that we're entering, we can use Flash Fill to let Excel finish out that pattern. So it was important that we first typed Toyota Prius in cell F3 to let Excel know that we were combining columns A and B. And from there, Excel could do the rest of the work. Now let's say in column H that we're entering the number 1 in each and every row. Instead of entering that manually, we can just come up to the first one that we've entered and find the bottom right-hand corner of that cell, and it's going to change the cursor to this small black plus icon. We can then grab it and drag that lower to autofill this entire column with the number 1. But let's say we want that list to be in ascending order. We can now click on that autofill options icon and change this to fill series. Now we have a numbered list in ascending order. That's pretty useful. And if we want to do this even faster, instead, we can type 1 in the first cell, and then when we click and drag, we can also hold Control to automatically autofill as a series. So let's say that we're giving a presentation on this data set to management next week, and we want to create a chart on this data to better illustrate the trends, but we've never worked with charts in Excel. So let's let Excel decide which chart to use for us. Let's go over here to the Insert tab, and then we have recommended charts right here. Let's make sure that we've clicked somewhere into this data set and that each of our columns has a header. Okay, let's go ahead and see what Excel has to offer us. And there's a ton of different charts here that we can choose from. At the top here, we have a clustered column that shows us sales, quantity, and profit by car model. We also have sum of quantities sold by maker, count of car model by maker. If we come down a little bit further, we now have a clustered bar and we have a stacked bar chart. We can see that there's really just a ton of different charts here that Excel thinks could represent our data in a way that might impress management. That's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and go with our clustered bar and hit OK. And now we have this bar chart right here. And if we refer to that in our presentation, I think management is really going to learn a lot from this data. And maybe we'll get that bonus that we've been waiting for. So in case you wrote proficient in Excel on your resume, but you weren't quite a pro, make sure to keep these tips and tricks in your back pocket anytime you need to whip something up in Excel real quick. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Office Skills for all of the latest Excel and Microsoft Office content.